Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at the new Royal Enfield Himalayan 450.
All right.
We've got a great article here from Cycle World,
Okay.
and we're really going to dig into, not just what the specs are,
Right.
but what makes this bike special.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to approach it because there's looking at a spec sheet.
Right.
And then there's understanding like what this bike's all about.
Yeah, and who it's for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll start with some of those specs, though.
Okay.
It's a 450 cc liquid-cooled single, which makes about 40 horsepower.
That's right.
And I think that's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like a crazy amount of power.
I think it's a really smart move on Royal Enfield's part.
Right.
Because they're not trying to make this like a race bike or something that's going to be intimidating for people who maybe are newer to off-road riding.
Right.
So it's got enough power to get you going.
Yeah.
And keep things interesting, but it's not going to be scary.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes along with the seat height too.
Yes.
Which is pretty high.
Yes, it is.
It's 855 millimeters.
Yeah, that's tall.
So that's going to give, a lot of riders.
It's a demanding view.
Yeah, a really nice view.
You can see over cars.
Yeah.
You can see down the trail.
Right.
So for visibility, it's fantastic.
For shorter riders, that might be
the trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's something to consider.
Yeah.
Before you, plunk down your hard-earned money.
Yeah.
Maybe sit on one at the dealership.
Yeah. See how it feels.
See how it feels. But yeah, I mean, if you can handle it,
yeah,
that height is really nice for being able to see.
And I think the seat height also kind of plays into that adventure aspect too.
It does.
One of the specs here that they talk about is the fuel range.
Right.
15-liter tank.
Yeah, it's a good-sized tank.
They're saying you're getting like 75 miles per gallon.
Yeah, potentially even more.
Yeah, so 300-mile range potentially on this thing, which is incredible.
It's a lot of exploring you can do on one tank of gas.
Yeah, I mean, you could ride this thing, to the middle of nowhere.
Pretty much, yeah.
And back and not have to worry about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it really opens up the possibilities.
Yeah, so that's great for adventure riding.
Yeah.
And then let's talk about some of the features that make it, maybe more geared towards that kind of riding.
Right. So it's not just about how far you can go.
Right.
It's about how comfortable you are.
Right.
How capable the bike is.
And how reliable it is.
Yeah, and how reliable it is. Absolutely.
Because if
you don't want to be stranded.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, if you're hundreds of miles from civilization, you don't want to break down.
You need something that's going to be dependable.
Right.
So liquid cooled, obviously.
Yes, liquid cooled engine. That's key.
Helps with that. For
keeping things running smoothly.
Right.
Especially when you're really working the bike hard.
Yeah, in hot conditions.
Yeah.
And it's also got some nice suspension.
It does.
Features.
So yeah, we've got USD forks up front.
Yeah.
And then a monoshock in the rear.
So can you explain what those are?
Yeah. So USD forks. It stands for upside down forks.
Okay.
And basically, it's a design that's known for being very stiff. And responsive. So it's great for handling bumps and dips. And then the monoshock in the rear. It's a single shock absorber.
Okay.
And it does a really good job of providing a smooth and controlled ride. So it sounds like overall the suspension is kind of set up for that.
Yeah, it's a good setup. It's designed to handle
off-road,
both pavement and dirt.
Yeah.
And give you the best of both worlds. So
it's not going to be like a super plush
bouncing all over the place when you're on the road.
Right.
But it's also not going to be jarringly stiff.
Right.
When you're off-road.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And then one other feature that I think is worth mentioning is the TFT display.
Yes.
And the Bluetooth.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of adventure bikes are starting to get this now.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to have that, all the information you need right there in front of you.
The speed, fuel level, all that good stuff.
Yeah, all the essentials. And the Bluetooth connectivity is great for, if you want to listen to music.
Right.
Or, take phone calls.
Yeah. Or use your GPS.
Right, use your GPS.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little feature.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will appreciate that.
I think so too.
Okay, so we've kind of got a picture of this bike now.
We've got a good foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how does it compare to some of the other bikes out there?
Yeah, because there's no backup.
There's no shortage of adventure bikes these days. So
let's bring in some of the competition.
Okay, let's do it.
We've got the KTM 390 Adventure, the Honda CRF 300L Rally, and the BMW G310 GS.
Oh, right.
So these are all
popular bikes.
Yeah.
In a similar
kind of in that entry level.
Yeah, entry level adventure bike.
Yeah. Right. So let's start with the KTM.
Okay. So the KTM.
What are its strengths?
Because it's a little bit more performance oriented.
Okay.
It's got a slightly more powerful engine.
Okay. 43 horsepower.
Okay.
It's lighter. And it's more agile.
So it's a little bit more sporty.
Yeah, it's a little more sporty. And it's got some higher tech features like ride modes and a quick shifter.
So it's got a little more of the bells and whistles?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a really fun bike to ride.
Yeah.
But there are some trade-offs.
Okay.
One of the big ones is the price.
Okay.
The KTM is going to be more expensive than the Himalayan.
Gotcha.
And it also has a smaller fuel tank.
Okay.
So you're not going to have that same...
You're not going to be able to.
300-mile range. You're going to be filling up more often.
Okay, so if you're looking at long-distance adventure, the Himalayan...
The range is a priority.
The Himalayan has the edge.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what about the Honda?
The Honda CRF 300L Rally.
Yeah.
This is the lightweight champion of the bunch. Okay.
So it's incredibly nimble off-road.
Okay.
It's known for its reliability, and it's very fuel efficient.
So it's a good workhorse, kind of.
It's a great little workhorse.
Yeah, yeah. But how's the power?
The engine is smaller.
Okay.
So you are going to feel a little bit underpowered on the highway.
Gotcha, especially if you've got...
Especially if you're loaded up.
Luggage or...
Yeah, if you've got luggage on
passenger.
Right.
Right. So maybe not the best for touring.
Maybe not the best for touring.
Okay.
No.
And then lastly, the BMW.
The BMW
G310 GS.
What's that like?
So this is the premium option of the group.
Okay.
It's got that classic BMW build quality.
Okay.
It's a great all-rounder, comfortable in the city.
Yeah.
Capable of light off-roading.
But what about the power?
A little bit lacking in power compared to the Himalayan and the KTM.
Gotcha.
So, again, if you're planning on doing a lot of highway riding.
Okay.
Similar to the Honda.
Or you're going to be carrying a lot of gear.
Right.
It might not be the ideal choice.
Okay, so we've got these three competitors.
Okay. So where does that leave the Himalayan?
Leave the Himalayan.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting about the Himalayan is that it doesn't try to be the best in any one category.
Okay.
It's really about finding that balance.
Gotcha.
It's sort of like the Goldilocks.
It's like the Goldilocks of adventure bikes. Yeah. It's not too much. It's not too little.
Right. It's right. And it's also pretty affordable.
Yes, it is.
So that makes it, a really compelling option.
They're a huge selling point.
Yeah, a lot of riders.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a pretty good bike.
It sounds like it ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the design a little bit.
The design.
How would you describe the look of this bike?
Yeah, it's got a really cool look.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's kind of a blend of modern and classic.
Yeah, I think it definitely looks like a Royal Enfield.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got that kind of...
And it's modern, too.
Yeah, it's modern, but it's still got that classic Royal Enfield kind of vibe. Yeah.
So it's a good-looking bike.
And practically speaking...
Practically speaking.
Does the design kind of lend itself to adventure riding?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about the things that really matter when you're out there on an adventure.
Right.
Comfortable ergonomics. The Himalayan has got that.
Yeah.
Adequate luggage capacity, for carrying all your gear.
Right. Tools and...
The Himalayan has got that camping gear.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And then durable build quality. You don't want something that's going to fall apart. You're out there bouncing around on dirt roads.
Especially hundreds of miles from civilization.
You need something that's going to be tough, dependable.
Okay, so it's got the looks.
So yeah, it's got the practicality.
It's got the looks, it's got the practicality.
But let's be honest, no bike is perfect.
No bike is perfect.
Yeah.
That's true.
What are some of the drawbacks with this one?
There are a few things to consider.
Okay.
One of them is the dealer network.
Okay.
Royal Enfield is still expanding in some regions.
Yeah.
So finding a dealer for service and support.
They're not as common as, say, a Honda or...
Might be a little more challenging.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the bigger brands.
Okay. What else?
Another thing to consider is the weight.
It is a little bit on the heavy side.
So how much does it weigh?
It comes in at about 420 pounds.
Okay, so not...
super heavy. It's not super heavy, but it's not a lightweight.
Right.
And you will feel that weight.
Okay.
You know, when you're doing low-speed maneuvers.
Gotcha.
Or navigating tight trails.
Anything else?
Yeah. So another thing to keep in mind is that while the Himalayan does have a great TFT display, it doesn't have some of the more advanced electronic features that you might find on some higher-end adventure bikes.
Like traction control?
Yeah, like ride modes, cornering, ABS.
Okay. So it's more of a back-to-basics approach.
It's more of a back-to-basics approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then highway performance.
Highway performance.
How does it do?
It's adequate.
Okay.
It'll get you where you need to go.
Right.
But it's not going to be a speed demon.
Okay.
The top speed of this.
It's about 80 miles per hour.
Is not a bike for blasting down.
Yeah, this is not a bike for blasting down.
The Autobahn.
The Autobahn.
And then lastly, customization.
Customization. So the aftermarket scene for the Himalayan is still developing.
Okay.
You'll find some practical accessories, you know, luggage racks, crash bars, things like that.
Right. But maybe not as much.
But the selection is not as extensive as you might find.
As some other more established models.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're someone who likes to really personalize your bike.
If you're a big aftermarket enthusiast.
There might be some.
It's something to consider. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot here about this bike.
We've covered a lot of ground. But before we
any frequently asked questions?
Yeah, there are a few about this bike.
That come up often.
That we should address.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the most common ones is about top speed.
Okay. Well, we kind of touched on that.
We did. Yeah, we did.
But yeah, 80 miles an hour.
80 miles an hour.
That's enough for most people.
For most people, that's plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for an adventure bike.
An adventure bike. Yeah.
You're not going to be setting
any land speed records,
winning any races on this thing.
But you'll be able to keep up with traffic on the highway.
What about off-road capability?
Off-road capability. Sorry. This is where the Himalayan really shines.
Yeah, we've talked about the suspension, the ground clearance.
Yeah, we've talked about the suspension, the ground clearance, the tires.
Yeah.
But is it actually...
It's a pretty capable off-road machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it can handle tough terrain.
It can handle tough terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another common question is about fuel efficiency.
Yeah.
We talked about the range. But people want to know, you know, what are
the MPG numbers?
The real world numbers.
Yeah, what are the real world numbers?
Yeah.
So you can expect to get around 75 miles per gallon.
Okay. So that's pretty good.
That's very good. Especially for an adventure bike.
Especially for a bike of this size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think that covers most of the...
Yeah, I think we hit the main points there.
Anything else you want to add?
Done a pretty good job.
Before we wrap up part 1.
Of unpacking, you know, the key details about the Himalayan.
Yeah, we've really...
You've looked at the specs, the features, how it compares to the competition.
Yeah, but stay tuned because in part 2, we're going to talk about...
And in part 2, we're going to actually get into... what it's actually like.
The riding experience.
And to ride this thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's it like to actually throw a leg over this bike and hit the road?
Yeah. Buckle up.
Buckle up. And we'll see you in part 2.
We'll see you there.
All right. All right. So welcome back to our deep dive on the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450.
Yeah.
Part 1, we went through, you know, kind of all the basic stuff. But now we really want to talk about
let's get into
what this bike is like to ride.
The riding experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's it like to actually throw a leg over,
paint as a picture,
and hit the road?
What is it?
Or the trail?
Yeah. What's it actually like to ride?
You know, the feedback from people who've ridden this bike has been very positive.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people really like about it is that engine.
Okay.
It's only 40 horsepower.
It's not a ton.
It's not a ton, but it delivers that power in a really nice way.
Okay.
It's very smooth. It's very predictable.
Okay.
And it's got good low-end torque.
It's got that grunt.
It's got grunt.
Yeah, that you need for off-road.
Yeah. So if you're climbing hills, navigating technical trails,
right,
you're going to have the power you need.
Okay.
And then on the highway, it's gained enough oomph to keep up with traffic.
Right.
It's not going to blow you away with its speed.
Right. But you're not going to be.
But you're not going to feel like you're struggling to keep up.
Yeah. Okay. And how about that suspension?
The suspension.
We talked about those USD forks and that monoshock.
This is where the Himalayan really shines.
Yeah.
That's an action. It soaks up bumps and dips like a champ. It's smooth. It's controlled.
Okay.
And it really inspires confidence.
So whether you're on pavement.
Yeah, whether you're on pavement or dirt.
Or off-road.
You're going to have a good time.
It's going to feel good.
Yeah, you're going to feel the terrain because you want that feedback.
Right, you don't want it to be...
You don't want it to be completely numb.
Completely isolated.
But it's not going to be jarring or uncomfortable.
Okay, so it's good for those long rides where you're doing...
So it's good for those all-day adventures.
Pervasive stuff.
Where you're mixing it up, a little bit of pavement, a little bit of dirt.
Yeah. And speaking of those all-day adventures...
Yes.
How is the...
Comfort-wise, the Himalayan is really well designed.
Okay.
They've really paid attention to ergonomics.
Yeah.
So you've got that upright riding position.
That makes it comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got wide handlebars and a nice well-padded seat.
So you're not gonna get sore.
Yeah, you're not gonna get saddle sore after a couple hours.
2 hours in the saddle.
Yeah. So it's a comfortable bike to ride.
Okay. And then we talked about the TFT display.
The TFT display.
And the Bluetooth.
And the Bluetooth, yeah. So having all that information right there
in front of you,
riding experience
is really convenient.
Yeah. Is it useful?
You can easily see your speed,
your
fuel level, your gear position.
Okay.
And you can even use the navigation, whether it's the built-in GPS or you're connected to your phone via Bluetooth.
Yeah.
So it's just a really...
It's nice to have all that.
Nice way to stay informed.
Right there.
Without having to take your eyes off the road.
Yeah, you're not fumbling with your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it
sounds like
it's a well-equipped bike.
A really good bike.
Yeah.
But what about the stuff you can't really measure?
Yeah, there's more to it than just
the number. That's it.
There's that intangible quality that makes a motorcycle special.
What's the soul of this machine?
The soul of the machine.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about the Royal Enfield thump.
Yeah, the Royal Enfield thump is a real thing.
Is that a real thing?
It's a real thing. And it's part of what makes these bikes so charming.
It's not like it's not a high-pitched scream. It's not a roar.
Right.
It's this deep throaty rumble.
Yeah.
And it's almost meditative.
Okay. So it's got a nice sound.
It's got a great sound. Yeah.
And then
the aesthetic,
the look of
the bike.
Yeah. That blend of classic and modern.
Yeah.
It's a bike that turns heads and starts conversations.
So it's got some personality.
It's got personality. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the competition a bit.
Where would you say?
Where does this bike kind of fit in?
The Himalayan fits in.
Yeah,
in the adventure bike world.
Adventure bike world.
Who's this bike perfect for?
So I think this bike is perfect for the rider who wants it all, but doesn't want to spend a fortune.
Right.
It's the rider who's just as happy exploring a dirt road as they are cruising down the highway.
It's versatile.
It's versatile.
Okay. So you don't have to be...
It's the rider who values...
Be core off-roader.
And a touch of classic cool...
right, you could be...
So it's not anyone.
It's not just for hardcore off-roaders.
Right. It's not just for seasoned adventure travelers.
Yeah.
It's it's a bike that can appeal to a wide range of riders.
Okay. And I think you mentioned earlier.
I think it's a great entry point into the world of adventure motorcycles.
Entry-level bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bike that can grow with you as your skills and your confidence develop.
Yeah.
And even for experienced riders, it offers a refreshingly simple and enjoyable riding experience.
And I think that's sometimes lost in a lot of these.
Sometimes we get caught up in the technology and the performance.
It's nice to have something simple.
Yeah, and we forget about
that's just fun.
The simple joy of riding a motorcycle.
Right.
And that's what the Himalayan offers.
This has been a great overview of the Himalayan 450.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
Any final thoughts?
I think Royal Enfield has created...
So we wrap up part 2.
Something really special with this bike.
What are your...
It captures the essence...
Big takeaways.
...of adventure motorcycling.
Yeah.
While remaining accessible, affordable, and most importantly, incredibly fun to ride.
I think that's the most important part.
It's a bike that makes you want to get out there and explore.
Yes.
And push your boundaries.
And go on an adventure.
And discover new horizons.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's inspiring.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up this part.
Yeah.
I have a question for you and for the listeners.
All right, listening.
Considering everything we've learned about this bike, what kind of adventure?
Thinking about everything.
I take it on.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Himalayan's strengths.
My dreams.
Its capabilities.
Our souls.
Its spirit of adventure.
What could you achieve with this bike? What kind of adventure would you take it on? That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it deserves some serious contemplation.
Right.
The beauty of a bike like the Himalayan is that it opens up a world of possibilities.
Yeah. It's a blank canvas?
It's a blank canvas.
Okay.
You can paint your own adventure.
So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, what are you waiting for?
Grab your gear and go explore.
Go explore.
Yeah.
But before you do that.
Right.
Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed and how it relates to you and your individual riding aspirations.
We'll do that.
We'll do that in part 3.
In part 3.
Of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground in the past couple parts. We really have. We've gotten into the specs, the features.
The riding experience.
The riding experience.
The bad, the ugly, all of it.
But now I think it's time to really talk about you.
Yeah, that's right.
The listener.
How does all this information we've been talking about actually relate to you?
Yeah.
Your needs, your aspirations.
Right. Does this bike actually make sense
a rider
for you?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the best motorcycle is the one that fits you.
Right.
Your lifestyle.
It doesn't make
your dreams.
When anyone else thinks.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's take a moment and reflect.
Think about everything we've discussed.
Yeah. Think back to those things that really stood out to you. What got you excited about this bike?
Got you excited.
Was it that engine, that nice blend of power and approachability?
Yeah. Was it the fact that you could...
Was it that long fuel range?
Yeah. Ride this thing for hundreds of miles.
Giving you the freedom to explore without having to constantly stop for gas.
Or maybe it was just like the comfort.
Yeah, maybe it was the comfort.
The
ergonomics that make it such a comfortable bike to ride.
All day long.
All day long.
Yeah.
And remember those drawbacks we talked about?
Right.
The things that some people might consider to be deal breakers?
Yeah.
Well, for you, they might not matter at all.
Yeah.
It all comes down to your priorities.
Right.
And what you're looking for in a bike.
Maybe the electronics aren't a big deal for you.
Yeah. Maybe you don't care about having all the latest gadgets and gizmos.
Right.
Maybe you're someone who prefers a simpler, more analog riding experience.
That's a pull.
Or maybe the weight of the bike isn't a concern for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you're strong.
Maybe
you're confident in your handling skills.
Used to heavier bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the point is
there's no right or wrong answer here.
Right.
It's all about finding the bike that best suits you.
Personal preference.
Your individual needs and your riding style.
Okay.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a little challenge. Are you ready for it?
I love a good challenge.
All right, here it is.
Okay.
Close your eyes for a moment.
Okay. Eyes closed.
And imagine yourself on the Himalayan 450.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
What kind of roads are you riding?
Yeah, where am I going?
Who's with you?
Is it just me or?
Are you carving through those mountain passes?
Yeah. Am I with friends?
The wind in your hair, the scent of pine trees filling the air.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're cruising down a dusty desert highway, sun on your face, the vastness of the landscape stretching out before you.
I can see it.
Perhaps you're exploring hidden trails.
Yeah.
Testing your limits.
Pushing my limits.
Feeling the thrill of conquering new challenges.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just enjoying a leisurely ride, connecting with nature, escaping the hustle and bustle of everyday life.
Nice.
The possibilities are endless,
and
the choice is yours.
So many options.
The Himalayan 450 is a tool, a gateway to adventure.
It is.
But the real journey begins with your imagination.
It starts in your mind.
So dream big.
Yeah.
Explore those possibilities.
Don't be afraid to.
And let the Himalayan 450 be your guide.
Yeah.
Now, this deep dive is just the beginning.
It is.
There's a wealth of information out there waiting to be discovered.
So much more to learn.
Read more reviews, watch videos, talk to other riders.
Talk to people who've ridden the bike.
Yeah. But most importantly,
that's the most important thing.
Get out there and experience it for yourself.
Yeah, go ride it.
Because ultimately, the best way to know if the Himalayan 450 is right for you is to throw a leg over it.
Is to just ride it.
And ride.
All right.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
On this deep dive.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you learned something.
We hope you learned something.
And we hope you're feeling inspired
to go
on an adventure.
So until next time.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep riding.
Ride safe, everyone.